Every single day is a fresh chance to step into who you're meant to become. It's not about waiting for the right moment or the perfect conditions, because those things rarely ever come. It's about deciding right here, right now, that you will not let another day slip away without learning, without growing, without sharpening your mind like a weapon ready for the world. The truth is, education doesn't end with a degree. Real education begins the moment you choose to become a student of life. And life, with all its chaos and beauty, has endless lessons to offer if only you're willing to learn. Everywhere you turn, there's something new to absorb, something new to master. You don't need to sit in a classroom to get smarter. You need curiosity, you need hunger, you need the fire in your belly that tells you, I'm not done yet. The voice that whispers, there's more, you can do more, you can know more, you can be more. And that voice isn't lying. The smartest, most successful people in the world weren't born with all the answers. They asked the right questions, they refused to stop seeking, and they committed to educating themselves every single day, relentlessly. The first way to educate yourself is the simplest and the most powerful. Read. Read like your life depends on it. Books, articles, essays, biographies, anything that stretches your mind and opens your eyes. One book can change your perspective. One sentence can wake you up. Words have power, and when you choose to read, you're feeding your mind with the energy it needs to conquer challenges. You're stepping into the lives of people who've walked through fire and made it out stronger. You're building a mental library that no one can ever take away from you. The second way is to listen. Not just hear, listen. Listen to people who've walked different paths, fought different battles, built different legacies. Listen to those who challenge your beliefs, not just those who echo them. Podcasts, interviews, TED Talks, conversations with mentors, every voice has a lesson. And sometimes unexpected voices carry the most powerful truths. When you truly listen, you absorb not just knowledge, but wisdom. You train yourself to understand, to empathize, to connect, and that makes you not only smarter, but more human. Next is to observe. Watch how the world works. Watch how people move, how they react, how they solve problems. Education is everywhere, on the streets, in nature, in relationships, in the rhythm of daily life. Observe the patterns, the causes and effects, the unspoken rules. Ask yourself why things are the way they are. Curiosity isn't just about books, it's about awareness. It's about looking at the world through eyes wide open and realizing that every moment holds a lesson if you're paying attention. Then comes action. The most underrated form of education is doing. You learn by trying, by failing, by falling flat on your face and getting back up again. You learn by putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, by stepping outside your zone of safety, by daring to create something out of nothing. You can read all the books and listen to all the podcasts, but until you act, until you build, write, speak, pitch, lead, you're not growing. Real learning happens when theory meets practice, when knowledge meets courage, and finally, teach. Share what you know. Teach your younger siblings, your friends, your team, your community. The moment you teach something, you understand it on a deeper level. Teaching isn't just about helping others. It's about reinforcing your own growth. When you give, you receive. When you explain, you realize what you've mastered and what you still need to learn. Teaching turns knowledge into legacy. And legacy is what makes your journey matter. So every day, wake up and choose one thing to read, one thing to listen to, one thing to observe, one thing to try, and one thing to share. Don't wait for someone to give you permission. Don't wait for someone to hand you the map. You are the map. You are the compass. You are the engine that fuels your own evolution. And when you commit to educating yourself daily, you become unstoppable, not just in the goals you reach, but in the person you become. Because real power doesn't come from how much you know. It comes from how committed you are to never stop learning. That commitment makes you fearless. It makes you adaptable. It makes you rise when others fall. Every page you turn, every story you hear, every lesson you apply, it adds armor to your soul. It gives you strength the world can't take away. It transforms you from someone who waits for opportunity to someone who creates it. And in a world that never stops changing, your hunger to grow becomes your greatest weapon. Your dedication to learning becomes your superpower. It doesn't matter where you started or how many times you've failed. What matters is that you refuse to stay the same. You refuse to settle, you rise, you learn, you become. And one day the world will look at you and say, that one, unstoppable. Reading is one of the most powerful tools available to those who hunger for growth, and yet many overlook its quiet strength. It's not just about flipping through pages or scanning for information. It's about entering a world where your imagination, thoughts, and beliefs are stretched. When you read with intent, you're not merely passing time, you're engaging in an intellectual and emotional dialogue with some of the brightest minds to have walked this earth. Their words become your mirror, your teacher, your challenger. With every page, you're unlocking doors to rooms within yourself you didn't know existed. Reading relentlessly isn't a habit, it's a way of sharpening your mind, of feeding your soul with the ideas that will one day shape your destiny. Some books speak gently to your heart, while others slap you awake with bold truths. Both are essential. Some stories will comfort you, others will disturb you, but each one has something to teach. In biographies, you walk beside greatness. In fiction, you enter 1,000 different lives. In essays and articles, you're thrust into the heat of current thought. Every form of writing has the power to educate, and when you expose yourself to a variety of voices, you're not just reading words, you're challenging your own worldview. That kind of discomfort is a gift. Growth doesn't come from reading what affirms your beliefs, it comes from confronting what contradicts them. A single sentence, sometimes even a phrase, can stay with you for a lifetime. It might be something so simple, so elegantly crafted, that it changes how you see the world forever. That's the magic of words. They don't need to shout. They don't need to overwhelm. They just need to be true. And when you come across that kind of truth, raw, undeniable, it seeps into your bones. You carry it with you through every decision, every challenge, every quiet moment of doubt. One sentence can become your anchor. One line can reignite your purpose. That's why you read not just to finish, but to feel. Reading relentlessly requires more than time. It requires hunger. It demands that you prioritize learning over scrolling, reflection over distraction. In a world addicted to speed, reading forces you to slow down, to listen, to think. It teaches patience. It trains your brain to dive deeper instead of skimming the surface. And in that depth, you discover connections, patterns, and insights that others miss. You develop the ability to think critically, to ask better questions, to spot truth in a sea of noise. The more you read, the more discerning you become, not just about information, but about life. Books can be your private mentor when no one is around to guide you. They are available in silence, in solitude, in darkness, and in light. They're the wisdom of centuries stacked neatly on your shelf, waiting for you to open them. No matter where you're from or what you've been through, books do not judge, they invite, they include, they educate. Every great thinker, every world changer has been shaped by what they've read. And if you want to join the ranks of the unstoppable, you must be relentless in your pursuit of knowledge. Reading is not optional for those who seek excellence, it's essential. So when you choose to read every day, not just occasionally, not just when it's convenient, you're making a bold declaration to the world and to yourself that your growth matters, that your future is worth the investment, that your mind deserves to be fed with the finest fuel possible. And when that becomes your mindset, your progress becomes inevitable. You'll walk into rooms with quiet confidence, speak with substance, and make decisions rooted in wisdom, all because you made a habit of sitting down with words that matter. And from those words, you built a world of your own. Listening is more than just the act of hearing. It's the art of absorbing, interpreting, and valuing the experiences and insights of others. In a world where everyone wants to speak, those who learn to truly listen unlock a deeper kind of wisdom. When you open yourself up to listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole being, you begin to pick up on the subtleties that most people miss. The tone of a voice, the rhythm of a story, the emotion behind the words, all of it contains layers of understanding. Real listening creates connection, and in that connection, growth begins. The greatest lessons aren't always taught. Sometimes they're whispered through someone's lived experience. One of the most accessible ways to listen and learn today is through podcasts. The beauty of podcasts is that they bring the world to you no matter where you are. You could be walking, driving, working out, or lying in bed and still be learning something new. From business leaders to creatives, from scientists to spiritual thinkers, there is a voice out there for every curiosity you have. The best part, these voices often come with stories of struggle, failure, redemption, and triumph. Listening to such stories doesn't just educate, it inspires. It reminds you that behind every success is a journey, and in every journey, there is something worth learning. Conversations are another powerful tool for self-education, especially when they involve people whose perspectives differ from yours. It's easy to talk to people who agree with you. It's comfortable. But real growth lies in talking to those who challenge your views, who push you to think harder and see further. When you engage in dialogue with curiosity rather than defensiveness, you evolve. You start to understand that truth is not always black and white. You learn the value of empathy. And most importantly, you realize that wisdom doesn't always come from age or status. It can come from the most unexpected voices if you're truly listening. There's an incredible humility that comes with listening to others, not because you are less, but because you recognize that everyone knows something you don't. Every person carries a story, a skill, or a struggle you've never lived through. When you listen, you're not just gaining information, you're gaining insight into how the world works beyond your own experience. You become more human, more aware, more capable of navigating complexity. Listening becomes a bridge, a teacher, and a mirror all at once. It opens your mind in ways that books and screens alone cannot. In a noisy world filled with opinions, being a good listener sets you apart. It gives you clarity in confusion, direction in doubt. When you truly listen, you're training your mind to filter what matters from what doesn't. You're developing the ability to analyze, to reflect, to synthesize what you've heard into something meaningful. This mental discipline sharpens your thinking. It turns passive hearing into active understanding. Over time, you begin to make better decisions, give better advice, and live with a greater sense of purpose. Because you've built your mindset not on echo chambers, but on a foundation of diverse thought. The greatest leaders, the wisest thinkers, and the most innovative creators all have one thing in common. They listen. They listen to the people they serve, the critics they face, and the communities they represent. They understand that to lead is to listen first. So if you want to rise, if you want to grow, if you want to become unstoppable, you must become a student of every voice you encounter. Absorb knowledge like a sponge. Let ideas stretch your mind. Let stories touch your heart. Because when you truly listen, you don't just learn, you transform. There is an entire universe of education unfolding around you every single day, but only the truly attentive ever notice it. Most people rush through life with their heads buried in their phones or their minds tangled in worries, missing the quiet brilliance of what's happening right in front of them. But when you choose to observe the world and instead of just passing through it, you start to see the invisible threads connecting people, events, and outcomes. You begin to witness the unspoken rules that shape society, the subtleties in expression that reveal truth, and the moments of magic tucked into the ordinary. Observation turns the world into a living classroom, and every street, every face, every experience becomes a lesson waiting to be learned. The beauty of observation is that it doesn't require a degree, a title, or special access. It just requires your presence. All around you, people are making decisions, reacting to situations, solving problems, and navigating their lives. And if you pay close attention, you'll begin to notice patterns. How someone responds under pressure. How trends rise and fall. How confidence walks into a room before a word is spoken. These are not things you learn in textbooks. They are truths you gather by watching the world with open eyes and a curious mind. Every situation, whether it's a packed subway or a quiet coffee shop, becomes rich with insight when you choose to observe with intention. Watching human behavior is one of the most enlightening forms of education. People reveal more about themselves in their actions than in their words. You can learn about leadership by watching how someone treats those who serve them. You can learn about resilience by noticing who keeps showing up after life knocks them down. And you can learn about authenticity by observing who stays true to themselves when no one is watching. The human condition is full of lessons, and every interaction holds the potential to teach you something if you're paying attention. The world is filled with teachers disguised as strangers, and their classroom is everywhere. Even your own experiences, often brushed aside or rushed through, are packed with wisdom. How often do we go through a challenge and move on without asking what it taught us? Observation isn't just about looking outward, it's about turning that same gaze inward. Reflect on how you reacted to a tough situation. Analyze the decisions you made in moments of fear or pressure. Examine the way you respond to praise or criticism. The ability to observe your own patterns is a powerful tool for self-growth. When you become a student of yourself, you begin to move through the world with clarity, self-awareness, and intention. Observation also sharpens your instincts. Over time, the more you observe, the better you get at reading situations, anticipating outcomes, and making wise choices. You start to notice the energy in a room, the unspoken dynamics between people, the potential opportunities hiding behind small moments. This isn't magic, it's mental muscle developed through consistent conscious observation. You become the kind of person who sees what others miss, who understands what others don't, and that awareness becomes your advantage. It gives you insight in business, strength in relationships, and strategy in life. Those who master the art of observation never walk blindly into the future. They are aware, they are awake. They notice details, listen between the lines, and see beyond appearances. They realize that life is always speaking. It's just that most people aren't listening or watching closely enough. But if you're willing to pause, to look closer, to observe with curiosity instead of judgment, the world will start to reveal its secrets to you. And in those secrets, you'll find guidance, wisdom, and the kind of knowledge that can't be taught, only seen. There comes a point when learning must leap off the page and into the real world. You can fill your mind with knowledge, ideas, and inspiration, but unless you act on it, it remains nothing more than untapped potential. The truth is, our growth doesn't come from what you know, it comes from what you do with what you know. Taking bold action means being brave enough to risk failure in pursuit of something greater. It means moving even when the path isn't clear, even when fear tries to hold you back. Because every dream, every breakthrough, every success begins with one decision. The decision to take that first courageous step forward. Bold action isn't about waiting until you're ready, it's about acting despite not being ready. It's standing in the middle of your doubts and doing it anyway. Far too many people wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect confidence. But perfection is a trap. If your waiting becomes a habit, if you want to create change in your life, you have to be willing to jump before you're certain, to trust that you'll learn how to fly on the way down. Every bold action rewires your brain. It proves to you that fear is not a stop sign, and that courage is not the absence of fear. It's moving forward while fear whispers in your ear. The most powerful lessons you'll ever learn won't come from reading a manual or listening to a lecture. They'll come from trial, error, and persistence. You'll learn more about leadership by leading one small team than by reading 10 books on the subject. You'll learn more about communication by stumbling through a difficult conversation than by memorizing tips and tricks. The moment you start doing, you start understanding. The moment you start failing, you start growing. And the more action you take, the more confident you become. Not because things get easier, but because you get stronger. Bold action also breaks the cycle of self-doubt. When you hesitate too long, your inner critic gets louder. You start to question your worth, your ability, your right to try. But when you act, when you step up and move, you drown out that noise with momentum. Action silences fear. It builds evidence. And every time you show up, even if it's messy or imperfect, you're proving to yourself that you are capable. You are no longer sitting on the sidelines of your life. You're in the arena. And that's where transformation happens. That's where real confidence is built, one bold decision at a time. There is no comfort zone wide enough to contain your true potential. Growth lives on the other side of challenge. So when you push past what feels safe and step into what feels uncertain, you unlock parts of yourself you didn't know existed. You discover resilience, creativity, and courage you never had to use before. Taking bold action doesn't guarantee success, but it guarantees learning. It puts you in motion, and that motion turns into direction. That direction turns into purpose, and that purpose turns into impact. Without action, your dreams remain abstract. With action, they become inevitable. Experience is the greatest teacher, not because it always rewards you with success, but because it always reveals the truth. It shows you what works and what doesn't. It exposes your blind spots and shines a light on your strengths. It teaches you in a way that theory never can. So don't just collect information, turn it into movement. Don't just dream, dare. Don't just talk, try. Because when you take bold action, you stop living in potential and start living in progress. And in that progress, you find not just achievement, but transformation. There's a unique kind of power in taking what you've learned and giving it away. Teaching doesn't diminish your knowledge, it multiplies it. When you explain a concept to someone else, you're forced to break it down, simplify it, and look at it from angles you might have missed before. This process cements the lesson deeper in your own mind. What once was a vague idea becomes a clear understanding. Because teaching demands clarity, and in that clarity, you grow. Every time you pass on what you've learned, you're not just helping someone else. You're sharpening your own insight, elevating your own mastery. There's a big difference between knowing something and understanding it well enough to teach it. When you teach, you're challenged to answer questions, to defend your thinking, and to navigate the doubts of others. That pressure is what sharpens your intellect. It turns passive knowledge into active wisdom. It's easy to sit quietly with your thoughts, but standing up to articulate them, to be understood, to inspire, that takes courage and depth. Teaching forces you to go beyond memorization and step into the realm of true comprehension. It's there that your knowledge transforms from internal to influential. Teaching also builds your voice. It helps you discover how you communicate, how you connect, and what your unique style of impact looks like. The more you share, the more confident you become in expressing yourself. You begin to understand that your perspective matters, that even if you're still learning, your journey has value. And when you speak from a place of experience and authenticity, people listen. Your words begin to carry weight, not because you claim to be an expert, but because you're speaking from the trenches of your own learning. That kind of voice isn't just, it's felt. One of the most powerful things about teaching is its ripple effect. When you teach someone else, they go on to teach others, and so the chain of empowerment continues. One conversation, one shared lesson, one moment of guidance can echo into generations of impact. You never know who's watching, listening, or being inspired by your example. What feels small to you may be life-changing to someone else. That's the magic of teaching. You create value that multiplies far beyond your reach. You become a spark that lights up others, and in turn, they light up more. It's how movements begin. It's how legacies are built. Sharing what you know also keeps you humble. It reminds you that learning is never finished and that every teacher must remain a student. The more you teach, the more you realize how much there still is to learn. That humility keeps you open, curious, and evolving. It helps you stay grounded in growth instead of ego. You start to welcome questions instead of fearing them because they point to new paths of discovery. And you begin to see that true leadership doesn't come from knowing everything. It comes from empowering others to grow alongside you. In a world full of competition, choosing to teach is an act of generosity. It's a declaration that knowledge should not be hoarded, but shared. That wisdom is not a trophy, but a torch meant to be passed on. When you take the time to help someone understand, you're doing more than just explaining a concept. You're validating their journey, lifting their confidence, and expanding their potential. And in doing so, you expand your own, because the more you teach, the more you learn. And the more you learn, the more you realize that true mastery is not about having all the answers. It's about creating more learners.